Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, let me just lamp. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Let's start. Just gonna wait for a few minutes. Oh, not a few minutes, but just a few seconds. Okay. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So some of the questions that I'm going to be covering today. All right, so we have clapping and whistling when it's done to celebrate. So, for example, if someone's graduating, what's the ruling on clapping, whistling, wearing white gold watches for men, Islamic banking, owing money to someone who passed away, shaking hands, is it sunnah to use one hand or two, alcohol in vanilla extract and medicine, the history of Andalus by Ahmed al-Maqarri, and a dhimmi living in a Muslim state. What happens if he's killed by a Muslim? This is a very technical question, but since somebody asked, I'll address it. Non-Muslim inheriting from Muslim, the pact of Umar bin Khattab when he took Jerusalem, and the language of the prophets Ibrahim, Ismail, Musa, alayhimus salam, Semitic languages, origin, Arabic, Amharic, Tigrinya, Hebrew, Tigray, Syriac, dialect, which is a dialect of Aramaic, and extinct Semitic languages. So I think this is more related to it's more related to the origins of the Arabic language. Let me just go to my live feed over here on Facebook. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so first question. Clapping and whistling. So clapping and whistling in Islam. So you have scholars who sometimes discourage clapping and whistling, and they use the verse where in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that their salah وَمَا كَانَ صَلَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا مُكَاءً وَتَصْدِيَةً, that their worship was nothing but clapping and whistling. Their worship was nothing but clapping and whistling. So when the Quraysh of Makkah, when they would circumambulate the Kaaba, when they would do their tawaf, their ibadah and their worship was just clapping and whistling. This was how they would worship Allah. And because of this, scholars they take clapping and whistling as discouraged. But this was a very this was a very specific thing that they would do to worship Allah. This doesn't translate to prohibition if it's done, for example, when a person is graduating, or there's a cause for celebration, or there's a cause for congratulating someone. I don't really see an issue when it comes to clapping and whistling. If it's done simply to congratulate someone, if it's done to celebrate uh, somebody's achievement or anything along these lines. The ayah, the verse in the Quran which speaks about clapping and whistling, this was for worship, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was discouraging, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned as abhorrent. But if clapping and whistling is done to celebrate something, to celebrate someone's achievement, I really don't see an issue. So clapping and whistling is fine as long as it's done for the purpose of worship. I'm sorry, as long as it's done for the purpose of just simply celebrating someone's achievement. For example, someone is graduating, someone delivers their speech, anything along those lines. There's nothing wrong with clapping and whistling. So, first question, right? Wearing, and feel free to ask any questions on the live chat, uh, as I'm just going through some of these. Okay. Um, Wearing white gold watches for men. Okay. So, wearing white gold watches for men, first of all, for women, this is not even an issue because there's no issue for women when it comes to wearing gold. White gold watches for men. So, first and foremost, white gold. It's still considered gold. It's still it falls within the ambit of the same ruling for men wearing regular gold jewelry. What they do is that it's some part. It's approximately 60% plus gold. And what they do is that they mix different types of metals. You have palladium and silver. They mix it with gold, and that's how it has its very silver white look and finish. So this gold, it would be prohibited for men to wear. So wearing white gold watches for men, this would not be permissible because it falls under the hukum, it falls under the ruling of gold. So men should refrain from wearing white gold. Okay. So third question, Islamic banking. Islamic banking is pretty nuanced. It's very nuanced. Uh, Islamic banking, many people, they think that Islamic banking, it's the same as conventional banks, and the mortgages that a person were to get from an Islamic bank, it's similar to conventional mortgage. There is a world of difference between the two. Although many people look at the end result, but the contracts of both of them are completely different, and they don't correspond in any way, in any manner. Now, one of the primary differences in Islamic banking is that Islamic banking is more asset based. Islamic banking is asset based, and uh, what happens in Islamic banking is that the Islamic bank essentially becomes your partner in the purchase of whatever you're going to purchase, in the purchase of your house or your car or any tangible asset for that matter. So, for example, if I wanted to buy a car and I don't have the money for it, so I wanted to buy a car, the car is worth $10,000. Now, if I go to a regular bank and try to secure a loan, what they're going to do is that they're simply going to give me a loan of $10,000, and they'll tell me that, well, you know what, you have to, when you pay this loan back, then you're going to have to give us, instead of 10,000, you're going to have to give us 15,000. This is how a conventional loan works. Whereas an Islamic loan, it would work like this, where that Islamic institution, that financial institution, what they would do is they would purchase the car for you, and they would resell that car to you for a profit. Now this is the primary difference, where all the risk is taken up by that financial institution, which has underlying Islamic rulings, and they're following the Islamic modes of finance, right? So they purchased the car. Let's say they purchased the car for 10,000, and now because it belongs to them, they can sell you that car for 15,000 because it belongs to them, and there's no issue if it belongs to them. So this is the primary difference between regular mortgage or regular loans versus an Islamic loan or an Islamic financial institution. A bank just forwards you the loan, and you have to pay interest on that loan. Whereas an Islamic bank, what it would do is that they would purchase the actual item, and they would resell that item to you for a profit. Now they have complete authority to do that because the item belongs to them, right? So they're assuming all of the risk. They're assuming all of the things that go with purchasing any kind of item. Okay, owing money to someone who passed away. Now, owing money to someone who passed away, uh, obviously the person has passed. I mean, in that kind of situation, you can't really give money back to him. But what you can do is get in touch with that person's heirs. You get in touch with that person's heirs, and that person's heirs will assume the responsibility of that money and then distribute accordingly. So, very simple. If a person has passed, you owe him money, you simply get in touch with the heirs of that person, the inheritors of that person, and you give him that money, and that person will make sure it goes to the appropriate heirs of that individual. Okay, now shaking hands, is it with one hand or two? In the hadith, you have both narrations. Both narrations come in the hadith. You can either shake with two hands, you can shake with one hand. Either way, it's fine. Some people think that it's there's something wrong shaking with two hands. Some people think there's something wrong shaking with one hand. The fact of the matter is, in the hadith, both narrations come where the Prophet ﷺ shook with one hand, and the Prophet ﷺ shook with both hands. So either way, it's fine. Both of them are considered as sunnah. Okay. Alcohol in vanilla extract and medicine. Okay. So now alcohol in vanilla extract and medicine. The content of alcohol in vanilla extract, that content is it's a very small amount. It's not something that's going to inebriate a person. It's not something that's going to make a person drunk. Because if a person starts drinking vanilla extract or medicine that has some alcohol content inside, and he tries to get drunk off of both of them, most likely this guy is going to die before he even gets drunk, because uh, the alcohol content is just, it's very minute compared to anything else that has alcohol. It's not even a primary ingredient in vanilla extract. It's not a primary ingredient in medicine. So as I said, it's better to avoid, but it's fine to use it as long as it doesn't make a person inebriated, it doesn't make a person drunk, where a person starts losing his or her senses. So it would be permissible. Obviously, if you drink too much of it, I would say that most likely this person would need to go to the hospital if he drinks too much vanilla extract or he drinks too much medicine where he's trying to get drunk off of it. Then that person is probably going to be close to death's door. So it would be fine to use vanilla extract that has alcohol. When using vanilla extract, what happens is the vanilla, it just, the extract, I mean, I'm sorry, not the extract, but the alcohol, it just burns off. So when you use it in cooking or something, it just burns away. And there's no, if it just burns away, there's no issue with it. With medicine, again, it's not the primary ingredient in medicine. So, and again, if a person is trying to get drunk and inebriated off of medicine that has alcohol inside, this guy is going to die. He's going to need to see a doctor as quickly as possible before he even gets drunk. So Dr. Hadi asked the question, vitamins with gelatin. I mean, the issue over here is that uh, when using gelatin, usually the it's made from porcine or porcine products, and I'm not entirely sure if denaturization takes place. So I think this question, I did ask a friend of mine who is a biochemist, and he said that denaturization does not take place in gelatin. So if gelatin is used as an ingredient in any kind of food item or anything that is consumed, it's better just to refrain from it, because there's a possibility that it's not completely denatured. There is that possibility. So I did ask a biochemist about this, and this is what he mentioned. And he gave me the analogy of taking that ingredient, perhaps from pig, putting it in a blender and making puree out of it. That does it change in its nature? Yes, it changes in its nature, that something that was solid is no longer solid, it's become puree, but it's still pig. It's still pig, and that's the case with gelatin as well. It hasn't completely denatured, and it's something that we need to refrain from. There are examples of denatured substances. I mean, for example, if a pig falls into a salt mine or something and it becomes salt, that pig is no longer a pig, it's become salt. So no issue over here. It's salt, it's permissible for consumption because it's no longer considered a pig. Same thing with alcohol. For example, if alcohol, you go to the store and there's white wine vinegar or red wine vinegar. Again, there's no issue with that, because that vinegar was made from red wine, but the chemical properties of that wine has completely changed. So non-issue. It's become vinegar now. So there are examples in our religion where something that has changed in its chemical properties, and at one time was haram, has become halal. And an example of that is wine becoming vinegar and a pig falling into a salt mine. Brother Muhammad is asking, what about gelatin and medication? Same thing, as I mentioned, I asked a friend of mine who is a biochemist, and he told me that gelatin, I'm not an expert when it comes to biochemistry, so I had to inquire from a friend, and he said that it doesn't change. It doesn't change to the degree where it could be called something else entirely. So gelatin would still be considered as something that's from an animal, and it hasn't undergone the denaturization where we can say that it's halal and permissible for consumption. Another example I can give you is figs, right? We've all heard of figs. So if you Google this right now, I'm sure many of you are in front of your computers. If you Google this right now, Google fig wasp. Google fig wasp, and there's a wasp that lays its eggs inside a fig, and it just dies inside that fig, and it becomes part of the fig, right? But we don't know that, right? When we're eating a fig, we open it up. Do you see any wasps inside? No, you don't see any wasps. But that's another example of denaturization, where the wasp remnants no longer remain. It's become a fig completely. So there is no wasp. Although wasps do go inside figs, They lay their eggs and they die inside the fig. So those of you guys who are listening and are sitting in front of their computer, just type in fig wasp and you'll see what I'm talking about. Hopefully, I'm not discouraging anyone from eating figs. Okay. What's a good book to read on the history of Spain, Andalus? So, okay, look, one of the good books to read on Spain is a book written by Ahmad al Maqarri. So Ahmad al Maqarri, he was from Aljazair, Algeria. He was born in Tilimsan. So Tilimsan is a port city. So he wrote a book in Arabic called Nafhut Tib. It's a very authoritative book on the history of Andalus. Nafhut Tib, it means the breath of perfume. There's a translation of it, and that translation is by some French dude, some French guy, uh, and it's translated the history of Muhammadan dynasties in Spain, because you had a Muslim presence in Spain for approximately 8 centuries, and Muslim Spain for the first 300 years there was unity. After which they started breaking off into smaller dynasties. The scholars, they say that, if any given day you could probably walk, if you were to walk and do safar travel across the country, then you would go into, you would walk through 4 or 5 dynasties. This was how many dynasties and small emirates they were coexisting with one another. And one of the reasons why the downfall of Muslims in Spain, it happened, was because of disunity. They were constantly at odds with one another, and they were using the enemies of the Muslims against one another. They were using the enemies of the Muslims against the Muslims. So what Muslim Emirates were doing was that they would employ these mercenaries, and they would give them huge, vast sums of money, and they would fight for the Muslims against other Muslims. This was one of the primary reasons why Muslims eventually, the Christians, they took over, until just a small area remained in Grenada, and that area ultimately it became annexed into the Christian Empire. The last caliph, his name was Muhammad the 12th, and he handed over the keys of Grenada to Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. And if those of us who have studied American history, it was Christopher Columbus sailed under the flag of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, but they were directly responsible for the downfall of Muslims. But before them, it was the Muslims who were responsible for their own downfall. Acha, if you can answer this question in Urdu for our Urdu-speaking audience: our lives are predetermined, but can our destinies change with prayers and our deeds? Okay, inshallah, I'll get to that. Let me just... Okay, so somebody asked that a dhimmi living in a Muslim state, if he's killed by a Muslim. And this is a classical discussion by scholars. Now, what is a dhimmi? A dhimmi is somebody who's living in a Muslim state and is protected by the Muslim government. When I say Muslim state, I don't mean a Muslim majority country. When I say Muslim state, it means that a state where there is an Islamic government and it's ruled by a caliph. There is a khalifa, and he is interpreting the Quran and the Sunnah, and he is using both the Quran and Sunnah to rule the Muslims. This is what an Islamic state is. So a dhimmi, a non-Muslim living in an Islamic state, for example, you have in history, you will have Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians, Hindus, Jains, all of these different groups living amongst Muslims. They were considered as dhimmis, people who were protected by the Islamic government. Now the question is that if a dhimmi, someone who is protected, if he is killed by a Muslim, is retaliatory law exacted upon the Muslim? Will the Muslim be killed? So this is a classical discussion amongst scholars. So according to the school and madhab of Abu Hanifa, yes, that Muslim will be killed in retaliation. So the laws of qisas, they will be implemented. So the laws of qisas which are mentioned in the Quran, they will be implemented. According to the other madahib, according to the madhab of Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad, Imam Shafi rahimahullah, no, that Muslim is not going to be killed. So if a Muslim kills a dhimmi, if a Muslim kills a dhimmi, yes, there is going to be diya, there is going to be penalty, which is going to be imposed upon that Muslim, but that dhimmi, that protected non-Muslim, will not be able to use qisas. He will not be able to use the laws of qisas to retaliate and kill that Muslim under Islamic law. So this is it's a classical discussion amongst classical scholars, and they've discussed this at length. It's a very technical question, but this is very brief, so I just mentioned it very briefly. Okay, non-Muslim inheriting from Muslim. All right, so let's say a Muslim has married a non-Muslim woman, Christian, Jewish woman, right? Now, the Jewish woman dies, or the Christian woman dies, or the Muslim man dies. So what are the rules of inheritance? So the Prophet ﷺ mentions in a hadith, لا يرث المسلم الكافر ولا الكافر المسلم, that a non-Muslim is not going to inherit from a Muslim, and a Muslim is not going to inherit from a non-Muslim. So in this kind of situation, if they're living together and if they're going to pass away, if one of them is going to if one of them dies, then what's going to happen is that, first of all, they're going to do whatever they want to do. So let's be practical about it. They're going to do whatever they want to do, and it's a non-issue for us. But let's say, hypothetical situation, they want to follow Islamic law. They want to follow deen. They want to follow what Islam is saying. So this is the ruling, that a Muslim is not going to inherit from a non-Muslim, and vice versa. They're not going to inherit from one another. Okay. Pact of Umar radiallahu anh. So when Umar radiallahu anh, when he brought Jerusalem under Islamic rule, this occurred in the time of Umar radiallahu anh, where Jerusalem came under Islamic rule. So Umar radiallahu anh, what he did was that he drew up an agreement. It's called the Ahad of Umar radiallahu anh. So he drew up an agreement between the Muslims and the non-Muslims of Jerusalem, specifically the Christians who were living there at the time. So I believe Umar radiallahu anh, when he entered Jerusalem, he was taken to different areas of Jerusalem by the patriarch. His name was Sophronius. Yeah, I believe his name was Sophronius. So he took Umar radiallahu anh to the Church of the Sepulchre, the Church of the Sepulchre, the Kanisatul Qiyamah. It's known as the Kanisatul Qiyamah. So, and Umar radiallahu anh, he was taken there. He was taken to various areas in Jerusalem, just to the Pope, he was showing him different historical parts of Jerusalem. And Umar radiallahu anh, he was offered to pray his salah in the Church of the Sepulchre, the church which is called Kanisatul Qiyamah, the Church of the Qiyamah, the Church of Resurrection. This was where, according to Christian lore and belief, this was where Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, he was resurrected. This was where his resurrection took place. And this is the Qibla of the Christians. Their Qibla is Kanisatul Qiyamah, the Church of the Resurrection. So Umar radiallahu anh, he was taken to these historical places. He was told that, you can go and offer salah. Umar radiallahu anh, he desisted. He said that, look, I don't want to pray salat over here because there's a possibility that people are going to make it a masjid. So what he did was that he prayed salat outside, and that area was made into a masjid for future generation. But Umar radiallahu anh, he drew up a pact between the Muslims and the Christians, where basically the gist of the pact was that the Christians, they will have complete freedom to practice their religion. And this is how Islam was. I mean, Islam, when Islam came into the Persian Empire, and it brought the entire region of Persia under Islamic rule. I mean, you still had Zoroastrians living there. I mean, historically, Zoroastrians were living there. They're fire worshippers, and a lot of the stuff that they would do, we would find abhorrent in our religion. For example, they would practice incest, right? But Islam, it's not there to take away what they were doing. So they were free to practice whatever they were practicing. They kept to their practices. Islam didn't have anything to do with whatever they were doing. Islam, all it did in these regions was to level the playing field. That justice and insaf, it should be enjoyed by all faiths, not just the Muslims. And this is one of the primary reasons of Islamic expansion, that it's just to make sure that all human beings, regardless of race, regardless of religion, they enjoy the privileges of justice, which is equal for each and every single person, and not just one group of people. And this was one of the reasons why Persia was so messed up. If one goes into the history of the Sassanid Empire, I mean, those guys were really messed up. They would live lavish lifestyles while the peasants, they were they were downtrodden. They couldn't say anything. They couldn't do anything. They were they were just in figurative shackles by people who were in power, and they were not in a position where they could point a finger and say that, you know what, you guys are doing wrong, and you guys are enjoying all of these privileges, whereas we're over here suffering, trying to eke out a living. So Islam, all it does, it levels the playing field. Justice is something that should be enjoyed by all religions, not just the Muslims. So Islam is not predatory in nature. People are still free to practice their religion. People are still free to build their churches and worship. If when Islam, when it came to India, you have so many people who were you have Hindus in India. They built their temples and stuff, and over there they're all polytheists. They're worshiping statues. Islam didn't come into India and start breaking statues or anything along those lines. No. So people were still practicing their faith. They were still practicing their religion. Islam never had an issue with that. Okay. All right, I'll get to that, Brother Ahmed. Salam and praying together in Jama'ah. Is the reward the same if it is done at the mosque versus home? It is permissible halal to eat at restaurants like McDonald's, Burger King, etc. I'll get to those questions, inshallah. All right. Somebody asked about the language of the prophets, that what language did the prophets speak? So specifically, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismail alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, what languages did they speak? Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran that we have not sent any prophet except that they would address and convey the message of Allah in the language of their people. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was sent to the people of Babylon. He was sent to the people of Babylon, and it comes in the Tabaqat of Ibn Sa'ad, and it's also mentioned by Allama Aini, who was a great muhaddis of the Mamluk era. So he said that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he spoke Ibrani and Syriani. So Ibrani is Hebrew and Syriani is Syriac. So these are ancient Semitic languages. Ibrahim alayhi salam most likely, and this is he spoke Ibrani, Hebrew, and Syriac. Musa alayhi salam, he most likely spoke the ancient Pharaonic languages, the ancient Pharaonic language, as well as Hebrew. Okay, so they were multilingual. The prophets, most likely, and this is speculation on my part, they were multilingual. Ismail alayhi salam, most likely, because Hajar alayhi salam, his mom, most likely spoke the Pharaonic languages, so he too initially spoke that language. And later on, when the Jurhum's tribe settled in Makkah, where Hajar alayhi salam found the Zamzam, uh, the Jurhum tribe settled over there, and this tribe, they spoke Arabic, and this is how Ismail alayhi salam learned Arabic. And most likely he would converse with his father Ibrahim in Arabic, right? So Ibrahim, he was Ajam, he was not an Arab. Now, many people think that Ibrahim alayhi salam was an Arab. He was not an Arab. He was non-Arab. Although the Quran says that he was not a Christian, he was not a Jew, he was a Muslim. He followed Islam. And this has always been the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The deen of Allah has always been Islam. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he followed the deen of Islam. Most likely he spoke an ancient Semitic language. It could be Hebrew, it could be Syriani. There are Semitic languages. I mean, if one goes into the origin of Semitic languages, Arabic, its roots are in Akkadian. Akkadian is a very ancient, one of the earliest Semitic languages. So Akkadian, Sumerian, these are all ancient, extinct Semitic languages. I mean, they're still taught in universities. Then you have other Semitic languages which are still existing today. You have Amharic, Tigrinya, Hebrew, Tigray, Syriac. This is a dialect of Aramaic, and then Aramaic, Assyrian, Maltese. All of these are considered Semitic languages. So Arabic is from this branch of Semitic languages. The language that was spoken in the time of the Prophet ﷺ in Habasha, where the Sahaba, where they migrated. So the Sahaba, obviously, the people of Habasha, they didn't speak Arabic. So this was the Ashumite kingdom, right, where the Sahaba migrated. You have one of the, what was the Sahabi's name? There was a group of Sahaba who migrated, and the spokesman from amongst the Sahaba, his name escapes me right now, but he was, I mean, everything is narrated to us in Arabic, but it's very likely that they had a court interpreter who was interpreting the Arabic language to the king Najashi. His name was Ashuma. So Ashuma, this was known as the Aksumite Empire. This was known as the Aksumite Empire. And he spoke an ancient Semitic language called Ge'ez. It's still spoken today in Ethiopia. I believe in those days, the region that Ge'ez was spoken, it extended to Somalia, Somaliland, Ethiopia, possibly Sudan as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So Ge'ez is not an extinct language. It's still spoken today. These are all ancient Semitic languages. Ancient Semitic languages, they consist of triliteral and quadliteral roots. This is what Semitic languages are. So back to the question, the languages of the prophets. Yes, Ibrahim alayhi salam most likely spoke multiple languages. Ibrani, ancient Hebrew, Syria. He spoke Syriac. This is a dialect of Aramaic. He must have spoken Arabic as well, and he must have spoken the ancient Pharaonic languages, the ancient Pharaonic language of the pharaohs, because Hajar alayhi salam, she was from Egypt, and she must have spoken that language as well. At the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. As I said, Arabic has its root in these Semitic languages, specifically Akkadian. Some people say that Ibrahim alayhi salam spoke Akkadian as well, because where he was from, Babylon, they spoke Akkadian. This is a language that no longer exists. I don't think anybody in the world speaks Akkadian unless a person goes through some studies at a university where they're teaching Akkadian and these Sumerian and all of these languages. Same thing with Ismail alayhi salam. He did speak Arabic, but he must have spoken other languages as well. Musa alayhi salam, he spoke the ancient pharaonic languages as well as Hebrew. So you have these prophets who spoke most likely multiple, they were multilingual. And this should kind of encourage us as well to stick to our roots, speak our own languages as well as the language of English. Some people, what happens is that growing up in this country, we kind of forget our roots and where our parents are from. If our parents are from Pakistan, try to learn Urdu. If our parents are from India, India has so many different types of languages. If our parents are from Punjab, try to learn Punjabi. These are all languages. I mean, as Muslims, we should understand that it's good to speak multiple languages. I believe that the prophets, most likely they spoke multiple languages. So this is a sunnah of the prophets, that they did speak multiple languages. So we too should motivate ourselves to learn as many languages as possible. And this is one way to keep our minds fresh and increase our knowledge as well. Okay. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna go from. So Brother Muhammad asked about gelatin. So I believe I answered this question. So our lives are predetermined, but can our destinies change with prayers and our deeds? तो तकदीर जो है, तकदीर एक ऐसी चीज है जो काफी मुश्किल है. इसके ऊपर तबसरा करना काफी मुश्किल है. तो इतना मैं बता सकता हूँ कि ये तकदीर जो है, ये एक ऐसी चीज है कि अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला ने सब कुछ लिख दिया है. जब अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला ने ये पूरे कायनात को, जब अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला ने बनाया, जब अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला ने पूरे कायनात को बनाया, तो इसमें अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला ने ये भी तय किया है कि कितने लोग पैदा होंगे और कितना वो जिएंगे, क़यामत, ये सब चीज़ अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला ने तय कर दी है. अब उलमा का इसमें समझाने के लिए वो ये बताते हैं कि जो भी होगा वो तो होगा ही. इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि बस हम एक जगह बैठे रहे और कुछ भी ना करें, बस हम मस्जिद में बैठे रहे और रिस्क के लिए हम बाहर ना जाए. बाज़ लोग ये समझते हैं कि अगर अच्छा ठीक है, अगर मेरी तकदीर लिखी हुई ही है तो मुझे रिस्क बैठे बैठे मिल जाएगा. नहीं, अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला तो ये नहीं बताते कि हम बैठ के हमें रिस्क मिल जाएगा, कि हम घर पे बैठेंगे और हमें रिस्क मिल जाएगा. नहीं, अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला बिल्कुल ये नहीं बताते, बल्कि अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला तो हमें बताते हैं कि नहीं, आप बाहर जाए और रिस्क आप ढूंढे. ये अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला बताते हैं. इसी तरह जब आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम जितने भी मारिका में आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम शामिल हुए, अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला ने आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम को बताया कि ठीक है, आप जीत जाएंगे और इनको आप शिकस्त खिलाएंगे. बदर में आप कुफार को शिकस्त तो खिलाएंगे, लेकिन इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि बस आप मदीना में बैठे रहे और इनको शिकस्त मिल जाएगी. नहीं, बस आपको जद व जुहूद तो करना ही पड़ेगा, आपको काम करना ही पड़ेगा. तो तकदीर, हाँ, तकदीर तो लिखी हुई है, लेकिन हमें तो पता नहीं है कि तकदीर क्या है हमारे वास्ते. हमें तो बिल्कुल पता नहीं है इसके बारे में. तो हमारी जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि हम इस तरह अपनी जो जिंदगी है, हम इस तरह जिंदगी हम रहे कि हमें पता ही नहीं है कि हमारी तकदीर क्या है, लेकिन इस यकीन के साथ कि अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला हमारी तकदीर लिख दी है. ये है तकदीर कि हम इस तरह, और सहाबा का अमल यही था. इनको पता था और वो यकीन करते थे कि अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला ने सबकी तकदीर को तय कर दी है, लेकिन फिर भी सहाबा किराम वो काम करते थे. तो इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि हम काम ना करें, काम तो करना ही पड़ेगा, काम तो हमें करना ही पड़ेगा. यही तकदीर है. हाँ, तकदीर तो लिखी हुई है, और हमारे जो एक है तकदीर मुबरम, जो तकदीर मुकर्रर की गई है, और एक है तकदीर मुअल्लक, जो तकदीर मुअल्लक है. इस मुअल्लक का मतलब यह है कि there are two possibilities, right, of तकदीर. So one possibility, एक वजह ये तो ये है कि जब हम दुआ करते हैं तो ये जो तकदीर मुअल्लक है, the hanging तकदीर, right? So taqdeer mu'allak means that taqdeer which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what this person is going to do, but through dua and through prayers, right? Through dua and prayers, that taqdeer is going to change. Although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows what is going to happen, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is infinite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is infinite. So through prayers and through our a'mal, through our deeds, that taqdeer which is suspended, right? That taqdeer which is suspended, that taqdeer which is mu'allaq, that can change for the better. Although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that this is exactly what this person is going to do, that this is he's going to make dua, he's going to pray, and his taqdeer is going to change completely. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. I mean, taqdeer is a thing that the more we think about it, the more it seems that, you know what, if I'm destined to go into Jahannam anyway, and if I'm destined to be punished, then what's the point of everything? You know, what is the point of taqdeer? What is the point of me doing anything? So, I mean, in this kind of situation, we don't know what's going to happen to us. We have to still follow what the Quran is telling us to do and what the Prophet ﷺ's actions were. So as I said, Rasulullah ﷺ, he was promised victory at Badr, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say that, oh, you know what, you're going to get victory, you're going to achieve victory by sitting in the tent. No. The Prophet of Allah still had to go out, he still had to exert himself, he still had to put his thoughts into action. And then he was given victory by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So many people, they think that, you know what, if I'm destined for Jahannam anyway, I don't need to do anything anyway. I mean, you don't know that. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We still have to operate. And this is what I'm saying, that the Sahaba, they believed in taqdeer, they believed in predestiny. But what they would do is that they would still work as if everything was in their hands. And this is what we need to do. We have to work as if everything is in our hands, right? And this is the best way I can explain it. I mean, there's a lot more to taqdeer. It's a very complicated issue, and the more it is discussed, the more confused we will get. But another way to understand it is simply read the what happened with Musa alayhi salam and Khizr alayhi salam. I mean, if it was destined for that boy to die anyway at that time, right? I mean, a question arises that why wasn't he given the chance to grow old and given that chance to perform righteous deeds, right, and attain salvation. So I mean, a person could ask that question, but it was the predestiny that was written for him that he had to die at that time. So Musa alayhi salam, although he objected that, you know, you killed this young boy for no sin, for no reason. Why did you do this? Right? Why didn't you allow him to live so he can perform righteous deeds? I mean, this is a common example of taqdeer for that boy, that this was predestiny. This was what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed for him, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had predetermined for him. He had to die at that moment. And this was the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some things, as I said, the best way to understand this is that to a certain extent, things are in our hands, and we operate as if things are in our hands. Our actions, whatever we do, whatever we say, it's in our hands. We have, you know, some semblance of control, although it's still limited, right? Compared to the hereafter, where in the hereafter we're completely limited by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as to what we can say, what we can do, how much we can walk. On the day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to resurrect us. We won't be able to speak, we won't be able to walk, we won't be able to move an inch from our positions unless the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. Whereas in this world, yes, we can do all of these things, but there is certain limitations as to how much we can do. We're still within the boundaries of destiny. We're still within the boundaries of the actions that we're capable of doing in this world. And again, the best way to understand this is look to the action of the Sahaba. They believed in taqdeer. This is part of our destiny. The Quran, a common theme throughout the Quran, is all about taqdeer and predestiny, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has predetermined everything that is going to happen until the day of judgment, right? I mentioned in one of my speeches during our Friday khutbah about Yusuf alayhi salam, okay? That Yusuf alayhi salam, his entire life was spent in grief, where he was tried and tested throughout his entire life. He was thrown into a well, he was sold into slavery, he was imprisoned, he was wrongfully imprisoned, and then he was accused again by his brothers. Why did this happen to Yusuf alayhi salam? If this happened to anybody like you or me, we would probably throw a fit and go crazy. But at the end of the day, Yusuf alayhi salam was okay with everything because he understood that this was the taqdeer, and this was the destiny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had allotted for him. So he had to accept it. He accepted it, that this was his destiny, and this made him into the person that he became ultimately. And he became a prophet, and sometimes we have to go through these challenges to become that person which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed. So we have to become such and such person, or we have to say such and such thing at a very specific time. But to get to that point, we have to go through different types of challenges in our life to say that thing, to do that thing, to influence someone else entirely. And this is what taqdeer is. But we believe that we operate in this world as if all of the actions that we do are in our hands. But at the same time, we believe that predestiny is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already determined for us in this world. Okay. When praying together in jama'ah, is the reward the same if it is done at the home versus home? Praying in jama'ah, you will get the reward of 25 to 27 times at home, but obviously praying in the masjid, it's always going to be more virtuous, especially with the fard prayer. The sunnahs, it comes in hadith that the sunnahs prayers, they are best offered at home, but the fard, specifically the fard prayers, they are most virtuous when they are performed at the masjid. Although a person who offers prayers in congregation will receive the rewards of congregation at home, but he will not receive the rewards of offering prayer at the masjid. Is it permissible, halal, to eat at restaurants like McDonald's, Burger King, etc.? No, it's not. It's not permissible to eat at McDonald's, Burger King. They. I'm assuming you're talking about regular beef burgers and stuff. No, it's not allowed. So you can't go to McDonald's and just say Bismillah and start eating and say that, well, you know what, it was slaughtered by Christians. First of all, we don't know if it was Christians who were slaughtering. That's the first thing. We're not sure if Christians were actually slaughtering the animal. There's a lot of doubts clouding the fact that who exactly is killing the animals. Another issue is, how are they killing the animals? I mean, many of the animals that are being killed, they use a stun gun, they use a bolt, and they shoot a bolt into the cranium of the animal, and as a result, the animal dies. So another issue is that when they kill the animal, they don't really completely drain it of blood. So there's so much blood that's still left inside the animal, and blood is najas. Blood is impure, and this is one of the reasons why those who often eat McDonald's, they'll be able to tell you. But from what I've read, is that people after eating at McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and all of these different fast food joints, they feel bloated afterwards, and it isn't a very wholesome meal. And a lot of people, believe it or not, even Americans, they enjoy halal meat a lot more than their own meat, which they purchase at the supermarkets. They themselves say that the taste of halal meat is completely distinct from the taste of the meat which they purchase at the supermarkets. because their meat is tainted with blood and impurities and all different types of disgusting, bacteria. Whereas Islam, it promotes hygiene, that the animal should be killed in a hygienic area, and it should be completely drained of all blood, which is the primary impurity that's found inside an animal. So once it's completely drained, then the meat is going to taste that much. It's going to taste that much better. It's going to be that much more wholesome, and it's going to benefit that person. So eating at McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, any of these fast food joints, it would not be permissible unless it's fish fillet or something. Now my understanding is that as long as the fish fillet is cooked in separate oil, there's no contamination, cross contamination between whatever else they're cooking. I'm sure they're cooking beef and pork and other things. It should be fine as long as the oil is separate and there is no possibility of cross contamination. So it would be halal. It would be okay to eat the fish fillet. But if there is doubt, the hadith tells us "Da' ma yuribuk ila ma la yuribuk," that leave that which is doubtful towards that which isn't doubtful, and that which isn't doubtful is that we don't even eat from there, right? So if there's doubt even in the fish fillet that there's a possibility of cross contamination, don't eat. This is in line with the hadith. This is in line with the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Having said that, people, they cite the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ told Aisha radiallahu anha that, and it's in Bukhari. Many scholars, they cite this hadith that Aisha radiallahu anha, she inquired about the meat of the Ahlul Kitab, and the meat of people who were new to Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ said that eat it, recite Bismillah, and eat it. Now, when looking into the commentary of this hadith, and for those people who have looked into the commentary of this hadith, Ibn Hajar clearly states, and he's one of the primary commentators of Bukhari. So he clearly states that in Arabia at the time, the method of slaughter, was the exact same as Muslims. So the Jewish people, the Christians who were living in Arabia at the time, their method of slaughter was the same as Muslims, and even Jewish people now, they slaughter the exact same way as Muslims, and even Christians who follow Orthodox Christianity, their method of slaughter is the same way, where they cut from ear to ear horizontally, and they make sure that 4 vessels are severed. This was the method of slaughter, and this was the slaughter that was practiced in Islamic Arabia at the time. So when the Prophet ﷺ said that, Aisha radiallahu anha was actually asking about the doubt that they have not pronounced Bismillah. Right? And this is one of the major issues, that is the pronouncement of Bismillah a condition for the slaughter to be valid. And according to the scholars, all of the scholars, they opine that it's good to say Bismillah. But then there's a difference of opinion that is it obligatory to pronounce Bismillah? And this is where the scholars have disagreed. So, if according to Abu Hanifa, according to the school of Abu Hanifa, it's mandatory. It's wajib. It's obligatory to recite and pronounce the Bismillah prior to slaughtering the animal. The other schools of thought, they don't consider Bismillah to be a condition for the validity of the slaughter, although they consider that certain vessels need to be severed for the animal to be 100% halal. So, this is according to, you have different madhahib in play over here. Either way, back to your question, eating at McDonald's, Burger King, there's that. If it's fish fillet, it should be fine as long as there is no cross contamination. and the ingredients that they're using are halal ingredients. They aren't using anything that could possibly be haram. So that's okay. So that completes all of the questions for today. Are there any other questions before we close down? Any other questions or follow-up questions of what we've discussed so far? Okay, I'm assuming there are no questions anymore. Okay, so inshallah, we'll conduct our tafsir tomorrow, same time, 9 o'clock. It might be 9:05, considering that Maghrib these days is coming in a little bit late. So I think tomorrow Maghrib is going to be at 37. So I'll probably start the tafsir 9:05, inshallah, just to make sure that I don't get late coming back. But if there are any questions, save them for next week. I'll get to them. I'll get to them next week in our question and answer session for the evening. I mean, ask any question. No question is taboo. I don't know, when I did put a Facebook Live video, but I don't know, it didn't come up for some reason. And people wanted to ask some questions over there, and they were unable to get on the YouTube. So I'll try to make sure next week that the Facebook Live is working as well as the YouTube Live is working, and both of them are operating simultaneously, inshallah. Good. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Inshallah, I'll see everybody next week. And those who want to tune in tomorrow for the tafsir, tune in. It's going to be at 9:05. I'm going to continue from where I left off. I still remember last time somebody had asked a question about the three types of munafiqun. So I will be addressing that tomorrow, inshallah. I have not forgotten. I don't know who the brother was who asked about the three types of munafiqs, the three types of hypocrites that were living in Medina. But inshallah, I will address that question tomorrow. So inshallah, I'll see everybody tomorrow. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.